Andrea, and I'm going to talk to you about The Crow by James O'Barr, special edition. This is a graphic novel, and there's a lot of artwork that went into this. He especially thanks poets Arthur Rimbaud and Baudelaire, who he actually features poetry in there. There's pages of poetry, such as this one here. I don't know if you guys can see. And the rest of the team he thanks is Higgins Black Magic Inc., number 4 Sable Brush, artist Will Eisner for showing me how to choreograph a scene, Bernie Wrightson for showing me how to light that scene, Michelangelo for helping me keep that scene real, and Frank Frazetta for helping me keep that scene sexy. Thanks to Penny Press for an outstanding job with no particular page size. This book was published by Gallery Books in New York City. It is 272 pages. It is definitely a graphic novel because it's a compilation of, not compilation, sorry, it's 5 books, but it all tells the same story. It flows. So Act 1 begins here with Book 1, and it's called Pain. And Pain is essentially showing the protagonist, Eric Draven, and the depth of anger that he feels towards these men, and it kind of shows us where these men are a little bit, like why he's going after them, and he starts to go after them. And then he's going back and remembering the times that he had with Shelley. Shelley. And it's really kind of killing him slowly, even though he's dead. Book 2 is Fear, and this is still Act 1. And this is basically the men are starting to be killed, and they have no idea how or why this is happening. They truly believe that Eric is dead, and he just continues killing them one by one, finding out where the next one is, and he's getting hunted down, and nobody has any idea what's happening. He meets a young girl named Sherry who's fighting for her life pretty much, and he kind of sympathizes with her, and he starts to feel a bit of that human connection that I guess he lost when he died, but now he's, slowly getting it back. This is the book 3, still Act 2, I believe, and it's called Irony. And it's really just taking place with Eric continuing to get to the last of the group of men that killed Sherry. There was Tintin, Fun Boy, and 2 more. And they just can't believe that, as I said before, this is happening. But Eric is still very much in pain. Like, there's scenes where he's, like, cutting himself, and because he's just remembering what happened. And then it leads to Despair in book 4. And Despair is where we discover that this is what happens. This is what occurs to lead. It's the whole incident. The couple are driving. They get stuck on the side of the road there. And then these people come, the men that Eric ends up killing, and they essentially kill them. They rape Shelley, and it's what we've come to understand, why Eric is the way that he is, why he's so angry, and it leads us to Act 3, which is book 5, and that is Death. So it's really Eric's story, and his goal is essentially to avenge himself and avenge Shelley, because the conflict in Act 2, which is, the incident that occurs to them, supports that goal, because it's almost like, why did this have to happen? You took away somebody that I really cared about. They were just this innocent, vulnerable couple, and vulnerable in that moment, and, this horrible act happened to them. And as a result of that, the arc is solid, and it has a clear beginning, middle, and end, because it's this young guy, young couple, something occurs to them that makes Eric come back to life. He's being guided through with the crow as like an angel of death, so to speak, and he's able to avenge himself in the way of, yes, he's gotten revenge on these men who committed this horrible act on them, on him and Shelley, but he also kind of avenges himself in a way to make peace with, what with the circumstances, and it helps that he meets the little girl Sherry and has sympathy with her because he remembers how much better it was to feel that sense of connection with someone versus being this like invincible, beautiful monster as he calls himself. Um, and that I think the character that has a solid character arc is Eric, and that's the change that happens to him. There are effective transitions given the books that I showed you about, fear and despair and all that kind of guides you through his journey. And McCloud's, as far as McCloud's transitions go, there's a lot of pages like this, moment to moment, where you see not so much dialogue, but, something that is occurring, within the same space. I'm going to put some more here together. Non-sequential. This is like in the beginning, like Act 1, where we see a scene that's happening, but there's a lot that's kind of out of, see, like this, for example, and the girl. There's someone there talking, and then the crow all of a sudden, don't look, don't look. Like that's Eric kind of like remembering, but it's all kind of out of whack. So you really don't know what happens, like what that's meaning until you see later on at the end of Act 2, which I called it, oh, that could happen, like, which is what was happening to Shelley, unfortunately. Subject to subject, there's a lot of this also, where we see in the same scene, like Eric and one of the guys that killed him and Shelley. Yeah, that's happening. Scene to scene, where he's there and there's some action happening. And there's a lot that actually McCloud's transitions, it definitely does occur in this book, and it's cool how that aspect to aspect. This one is where Eric is in this scene, but he's remembering when they put a crown of thorns on his head. So it gives you that depiction there of Jesus Christ, or him as Jesus Christ. So it's almost like a flashback scene. And last but not least, so actually, yeah, no, that's it. Does the story make use of the page as a mini comic idea? There is a page in here that, yes, it does. Because it's this one right here. Because there's so many pages that are just like solid art, also, they do make use of the mini comic because there's a lot that is happening there. Action-wise, that's when I noticed that, like that whole page actually, it's a big scene. So they make use of that, but they also make use of pages like this. And even just like big pages like that. So, does the story make use of directional flow? Absolutely. There's a lot of like flashback sequences. So, the movement of art combined with layout and text, it does pull you through because you want to know what, like I showed you for the non-sequential aspect from McCloud's transitions. You want to know what that is. Why is that crow saying, like, don't look? Like, what is that referencing to? So I recommend this to classmates and friends because, honestly, after seeing the movie, I knew, and knowing that there was a graphic novel, that's why I always wanted to read it. And the graphic novel, I was surprised, was so much more different than the movie. But it was actually really good in its own way. Both are really good in their own way. I think that the artist really poured a lot of soul into this and just a lot of perspective. And other observations that I think I had or that I'd like to share is just that, you know, I think the message behind it, like if something happens to you and, you might feel like vengeance is the best option, but I think ultimately, like, love is more powerful than that. Forgiving someone and, you know, I hate to say like moving on, but letting it change you as a person and just letting it do that, and seeing how it can affect you in that way is much better than, drowning yourself in that sorrow. But you can find such beauty in the darkness always. I feel like if you see it in Eric's point of view, I feel like, he found in this artist, James O'Barr, found solace through poetry and through um, just creating this book, So it was really influential to read, and I think it's really kind of saved a whole generation. I feel like for people. So that's really it. I don't have any fun facts, sorry, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this presentation of mine. And I hope you guys read it. So thanks.